Hello and welcome to the PT on Ice Daily Show. My name is Trissa Hutchinson, Doctor of Occupational Therapy, and today I'm here to talk to you about what to do when a caregiver asks you to make your patient with dementia not too mobile. Now, if you're like me, anytime someone asks me to not help someone improve their physical ability or improve their functioning, well, that kind of makes my blood boil. Now, when I first was asked this question, and I've heard this from others, I immediately jumped to conclusions. I was rather judgmental in my own opinion about why would a caregiver ever want someone to not get better? I was frustrated and I didn't really look at it from the whole lens. So today, I'm going to take you through a 4-step process on how to be the bridge so that you can support both the caregiver and the patient in improving their quality of life. Because if we're not addressing this caregiver's concern, then we're probably not going to have an impact on the patient. So again, we're going to dive through a 4-step process on how to address this blood boiling conversation and make it more approachable and more effective in the outcome for both. The first step in this process is I want you to get curious. And when I mean get curious, I want you to ask your patient's caregiver, what is it that they are afraid of? What is the true root cause of the fear driving them to ask that their individual, the one that they love and care dearly about, does not get better physically? Oftentimes, there's a nitty gritty, something deep down that they may not actually be able to express right away. So when you're asking this question, it's not a condescending, what are you so afraid of? Rather, you're going to ask them, what do you think would happen if your patient or if the loved one got stronger? What would happen if they had more mobility? Maybe Jim is the caregiver for Betty, and Jim is afraid that if Betty gets stronger, then she's going to be able to get out of her chair again and she's going to start falling again like she was before. But right now, she's not strong enough to get out of the chair, so she just sits there all day. So Jim doesn't have to worry about her getting up and landing on the ground. Maybe Jim isn't quite strong enough himself to get Betty up and off the ground. So as a result, he's dependent on calling 911 and using emergency personnel to get Betty up and off the ground. Maybe he has to call his son or his daughter or rely on a neighbor to come over and help in those scenarios. And he hates having to ask for help. Maybe Jim has experience with getting Betty up from the ground in the past and hurt his own back in the process. So he's afraid of experiencing that horrible scenario again. Maybe he's afraid that if Betty gets up and she's more mobile, she's going to get out of the apartment or out of their house and she's going to go for a walk and he's going to experience what's called an elopement, meaning someone leaving their home and not being able to find their way back. And so he's worried that he's going to lose his wife. So I want you to get into the details. I want you to go in the weeds. I want you to ask a lot of follow-up questions and truly, truly dive in and figure out what is that root cause and what is that fear that your caregiver is experiencing. The second step in this process is I need you to make an action plan. I don't need you to simply validate by saying, oh, Jim, yeah, that'll never happen when he tells you something that he's afraid of. I need you to take action. I need you to figure out a way to incorporate and expose whatever circumstance is driving his fear and incorporate that into your interventions and into your plan of care. If Jim's afraid of not being able to get Betty up and off the ground, well, then I need you to teach him step by step and guide him through that exact scenario of getting Betty up and off the ground safely. Maybe Jim needs access to a gait belt so that he doesn't put as much strain on his own back when he's trying to lift her. Maybe he just needs to learn how to cue her step by step rather than overwhelming with multiple or longer sentence type cues. Maybe we can encourage that as we get Betty stronger, that will help the process too. But again, we're addressing this fear with the caregiver. Maybe when we talk to Jim about his fear of elopement or Betty leaving the house, we can suggest some different assistive devices or assistive technology. Some great examples that I like to use are a medical ID bracelet. So this is a quote unquote permanent bracelet. And typically it has the patient's name and then also has the caregiver's name and the caregiver's contact information. Sometimes there's a symbol or a simple phrase about having dementia on there as well. Just being mindful that it's not saying like, I have dementia on the outside of a bracelet. Your patient's going to read that and probably is going to have a negative response. But that medical ID bracelet can be really, really helpful so that if someone else sees the loved one or the patient wandering, they have some sort of direction on how to help them get home. Further ideas using something like a door alarm can be really, really helpful. They make awesome door systems now where there is a little trigger on the door. And you can put this on every exit to the building. So if there's a sliding glass door, if there's a front door, a back door, a garage door, whatever it may be, you oftentimes can get enough all paired together so that if any one of those doors opens, then one person or multiple people can be notified of this with a simple sound. It can be a notification to a cell phone. You can have systems where it notifies everyone throughout the house, just a simple ding, nothing super siren-y or super alerting, alarming, terrifying, etc. But just a nice notification that the door has been opened. And so that would be a trigger to go ahead and go look to see if Betty is getting up and trying to go outside by herself. Other ideas, using some sort of a tracking device, whether that be a smart watch, maybe it's a bracelet with some sort of an air tag or an Android version of an air tag where it's like a simple tracking piece. I've also used air tags or the Android version in like the tongue of someone's tennis shoe. This works really well for patients who wear the same pair of shoes and wear them all day long. That can be really helpful and gives you real time information in terms of where that individual is in space so that you can find them right away if you're unable to locate them. So again, it's so important how we take action and we address these fears and then we provide them resources to help reduce some of those fears. So number one, getting curious. Number two, taking action, integrating that into your sessions. And then number three, I need you to develop a support plan with the caregiver. Develop a support plan. And this isn't just saying, do you have support? Jim saying, yep, I do. My family is great. And then moving forward. This is asking Jim to name the individual that he calls when he's having a hard day. Who is the person that could come over and sit with Betty for an hour so he could go for a walk, do something for himself, and just get a break? Does he have access to any sort of community resources? Does that mean there's volunteers from his local church or a local community group? Is there any paid help in the community, such as like dementia day services or respite care services? Dementia day services are awesome. They're essentially like a daycare for individuals with dementia where they can go there. They're divided or guided, rather, through activities and engagement throughout the day, usually provided some sort of a snack, making sure that they're toileted. If it's a meal time, they get a meal. They're a great option to encourage participation of life for the patient while the caregiver can take a break and have a day or a few hours to themselves. Whatever it may be, I need you to get into the details and make sure that you develop that actual support plan though. Oftentimes, individuals who are caregiving for those who have dementia will tell you that they can handle it or it's no big deal. But if they're at the point of asking you to not help someone or not help someone they love get better physically and improve their functional abilities, then you know that even if they're not necessarily acknowledging it themselves, they're at their wits' end. They love these people and they want them to get better, but it's so terrifying and they're so burnt out that they're actually willing to have them sit in one spot instead. So make sure that we're developing and scheduling in breaks. So rather than just having a list that they can call when they need, encourage that they have every Thursday they get a break or every Tuesday and Thursday or whatever the schedule that works better for them. Ask them and encourage them to schedule in those breaks. That's going to make a huge difference in their stress and their physical burden, their burnout, and all of those things that come with being a caregiver for someone who has dementia. Now, we follow the process. Number one, we're getting curious. Number two, we're making that action plan to address the fear of number one. And number three, we're ensuring that there's a support plan in place for that caregiver. When we do these things well, we can move to number four, which is advocating and educating the caregiver on all of the benefits of physical activity. Now, we could go ahead and approach this from the negative side, saying all of the risk factors that happen if someone doesn't participate in physical activity. If we encourage sedentary behavior and dun, dun, dun. However, that's likely going to trigger a very defensive response from the caregiver. Instead, I want you to approach this from the positive side and talk about the benefits of physical activity and improving physical functioning. We can say things like, if we get them stronger and we get them more mobile, they will maintain and build their muscle mass, which reduces their risk of sarcopenia. If they're up and moving, we can improve or support their bone mineral density, which reduces the risk of osteopenia, osteoporosis. If we get them up and strong and moving, we're likely to help regulate their nervous system. So they're going to be more engaged in conversation and participating in the things that you guys love to do rather than having a higher risk of agitation. We can talk about how improving their physical and functional ability will reduce strain on the caregiver so that they can get up from the couch, they can get off the toilet by themselves as the patient, rather than the caregiver having to lift them up or support them in all of those tasks physically. Maybe it reduces strain on the caregiver's back because they don't have to hold on to the patient anytime that they're walking for fear of falling due to balance. Whatever it may be, we're going to go ahead and we're going to educate and advocate again in that very, very positive tone, positive manner. When we do this four-step process really well, it can be life-changing for our patients. Now, one thing I'm not going to get into the weeds on today, but I just want to mention is that sometimes this will provoke a conversation about whether moving to a memory care would be appropriate. I want you to be prepared for that conversation and understand that, yes, if we do this four-step process well, that's the best case scenario. We can change the attitude. But if your caregiver is at the point where encouraging sedentary behavior is their number one priority because they are so fearful and worried about their loved one, then maybe some sort of support like a memory care would be best case scenario. So just be prepared for that conversation. Overall, we're going to follow this four-step process to do our very best to be the bridge between the patient and the caregiver, improving quality of life on both ends. We're going to make sure we get curious and figure out what the fear is. We're then going to make an action plan to support and expose them to that fear, helping to reduce that overall sense of fear. Then we're going to make sure that we're having a support plan for the caregiver. And last, but definitely not least, we're going to advocate and educate about all things, how we can support physical activity and improve the life of both the patient and the caregiver. Thank you so much for listening today. And I hope all of you go out and absolutely crush your dementia care.